some of the great Barolo vineyards, and we have two special guests today. One of them is having a little trouble logging in, but I'm sure we'll get that fixed very soon. So that's Tiziana Settimo. Our other guest today is Paola Rinaldi. Paola, ciao.
Ciao.
Paola is with the Francesco Rinaldi winery in Barolo, and Tiziana is with the Aurelio Settimo winery in Annunziata in the commune of Morra. We're going to talk about the specific vineyards that these two producers work with. But first of all, I think it's only proper that I'm going to put up a picture here of another vineyard that these producers do not work with. And that is the Ornato vineyard. And I think all of you know why I'm putting this vineyard photo up, because Ornato has been made famous by the Barolo produced there from Pio Cesare. And of course, our friend Pio Boffa, who was the proprietor of Pio Cesare, passed away over the weekend. So I just thought we should just remember him for a moment. Paola, do you have any memories you want to share of Pio? Did you know him very well?
Yes, of course. We have our office in Alba, in the center of the town where the Pio Cesare wine cellar exists. So at the moment in Alba, in the center, there are only two wine cellars. Pio Cesare, of course, bigger than we are, and our wine cellar. So of course, Saturday we had the sad notice. And so I went to my uncle Luciano. He is 96 years old. He's maybe the oldest producer living at the moment in the Barolo area. And of course, he had some stories about the past regarding my grandfather and Pio's grandfather that were good friends. And both of them were born in 1891, enlisted and at the military together, and they started together the production of wines in Alba, and also selling the wine in foreign countries that at the beginning were especially Switzerland, because it's close to us. And this was, of course, Pio's grandfather that started with the wine cellar. He was in Alba, where now the wine cellar is working with Pio's daughter and Cesare, that is coming to Alba, I think, nearly 20 years ago, and absolutely he has a good experience, and maybe he can continue Pio's work in the best way. Of course, in Alba it was very sad notice, because the family, of course, is well known in the town. So, Alba is a small town, and so everybody knows other people.
Right. Tiziana has joined us. Thank you for logging.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
I'm really sorry. I have big problems with the Wi-Fi, with the PC, so I needed the tablet because...
That's okay.
I'm really sorry.
I know we had talked, and we were going to do this because the vineyard is right outside your winery, but I guess it's too windy and there'd be too much noise.
Yeah, so. I think it's even noisy. Okay. And so on the top of the hill, I will try later if I can do a short walk.
That's all right.
Okay?
We'll see how this works. I'm very flexible on these things. So we had just finished. I just asked Paola about Pio Boffa and if you had any memories of him.
Yeah. I remember him when I was really, really young, amongst the first pioneers. He was really a Langa promoter for our wines, for Barolo and Barbaresco, and particularly for his Classico Barolo.
Absolutely, that's the thing. Well, there's many things that I was impressed by him. I was a friend of his for 20 years.
That's why I would like to toast him, I think, with a glass of Barolo.
Okay.
I think for him, and condolences to the whole family, but a really big toast with a glass of Barolo to Pio.
Assolutamente, sì. That's very nice. Okay. I'll just leave one last picture up before we get to, you know, the two of you today, but just, this is one of the last pictures I took of Pio. This was unfortunately, you know, over 2 years ago because we haven't been able to travel. So, but I just love his smile. I just love his smile on this. And he was just always so gracious. And you're right, Tiziana, he wasn't there to promote only his wines. He promoted the wines of the Langhe. So he was just a true gentleman, and we're all going to miss him.
We lost a really great, colleague, but even person, you know, and I think he did really great for our wine region. Yeah.
Absolutely. We need to move on. I'm gonna break up here if we keep talking about him. So I'm sorry, but anyway, Paola, you had sent me a couple of photos. I'll put these up. Apparently, there've been some frosts in your area.
Yes.
Talk about them. This first picture, where is this taken?
Yes, this was a picture of, I made the picture yesterday in Cannubi, closed our house. And yes, in April, so in the night between the beginning of April, we had frost, and it was a little different than in the past, because usually, for example, also in 2017, we had some frost, but only at the bottom of the hills. So we never had frost in the Mediterranean like this year. So also my uncle, that is 96 years old, said he never had this problem in the past. It was new for us because it was very cold, and it was a very frozen air. So this is an example of a Nebbiolo bud. And the problem is that, of course, the grapes like Barbera and Dolcetto that need more time, and the vegetative cycle of these grapes begins a little later, I think they will not have problem at all. The problem is more for the Nebbiolo vines that are early budding grapes. So this is a variety that this year started the vegetative cycle 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. That is very early. And so the temperature was very it was a problem. So we had -7 degrees Celsius. That is very cold. For example, in 2017, we had a little frost end of April, but as I said before, only in the bottom areas. So we never had really problems on the Nebbiolo grapes. This is what happens in Barolo, close to our wine cellar. I don't know, Tiziana, if you had the same problem.
I totally agree, Paola. And it's really strange. It was really strange this year.
Yes.
Because my mom is 87. She's turning to 87. And she told me she never seen frost in Rocche dell'Annunziata, in our middle hill that is in between 250 and 320 meters on the sea level. It was in the lower part of Rocche dell'Annunziata, the bigger damage, but not on top of the hill, at the bottom of the hill, or at the bottom as it was in the middle hill. But I think, because I didn't see white frost, I think it was much more a really cold wind that arrived during the night. I think.
How many days ago did that happen, Tiziana?
Sorry?
How many days ago did that happen?
It was beginning, 1 week ago, eight days.
Yes, the 7th and the 8th of April.
Okay.
Yeah, approximately, yeah.
And go ahead. I'm sorry, you were talking about the lower and the higher part of Rocche dell'Annunziata where you are.
Yes,
you're in the lower part, correct?
I'm not in the lower part. I'm in the middle hill.
I'm sorry.
But I have lower because it's 50 meters difference between the lower part and the higher part. For example, on the top of the hill here on the southeasterly exposure, we didn't get damage. That's strange because it's really windy and it's really cold too.
Okay.
So Rocche dell'Annunziata normally are really protected and really another much not so cold microclimate. But it was exactly the opposite what could happen.
Let me put up a picture of Rocche dell'Annunziata here, and you can tell me a little bit more. This is I have a couple photos here. This is one I took on my last trip there. So this is more the upper part. Correct?
Yes. No. Yeah. Exactly. This is I'm not there because where there are the White Houses at the right side here is Rocche Costamagna, and I'm exactly at the opposite, totally right side.
Okay.
We cannot see my vineyards there.
I have another picture here. Let me put this up. Maybe this will be better.
Yeah.
Let's try this. Are you in this photo?
Yes, perfect. Yeah, you see how it's the difference. We are exactly in the middle of that hill, and you see down or up. It's few meters difference, but it's a difference. So somewhere we had the entire plant had the shoots totally frozen, and other plants only one shoot or nothing. So really strange. Never seen. I never seen, but my mom, I repeat, my mom, she told me never seen in Rocche dell'Annunziata.
Okay.
So it will be a damage, not really big, but I believe around 15 to 20% was lost.
Really?
Because we own there 3 hectares and almost half. So yeah, we will see. We will see what will happen. Yeah.
Paola, we're going to talk, of course, today about Cannubi and Brunate, but many people don't realize this. You also have vines in Rocche dell'Annunziata. Are you in this photo? You're not you, but I mean you're
no, I think we are more close to Il Torriglione.
All right. Yeah. I have another photo here. Maybe this will help.
Lo troviamo.
Yeah.
In
Italian we say chi cerca trova.
Yeah.
No.
We'll find it. We'll find
it.
No, still not yet. I have 1 or 2 more. We'll find it yet. I mean, these are pictures.
This is much more for Alessandro, for Rocche Costamagna. But it's really big, Rocche dell'Annunziata. You know, it's 30 hectares. It's really big.
This might work. Does that work, Paola?
Yeah, that's mine. Okay. And Paola, if you are in front to
yes, you have to go close to Brunate. When you see
qui sei girato verso l'Annunziata, quindi nell'altro versante, penso, giù girata.
We have to turn a little bit to find that. Okay.
No.
Your rows.
Next time I will send you a picture of our small parcel in Rocche dell'Annunziata.
Right.
Yes, you know, we will produce Rocche dell'Annunziata starting with Barolo 2018. So at the moment our Rocche dell'Annunziata is in our Barolo.
Okay.
And yes, really it's 1 hectare.
Okay.
And we bought the vineyard. So my father bought the vineyard in 1969. We planted it in 1960, And of course, each year we put the grapes in our Barolo Classico. It's nearly 1 hectare, and then some friends of mine said, maybe you can try a small quantity. I will taste these grapes separately and so on. And this is why, so we decided to produce a barrel. So we have nearly 25 hectoliters of Rocche dell'Annunziata in 2000, so with the next vintage of Barolo.
How many bottles will that translate to?
Nearly 3,000 bottles, I
Okay.
think, yes.
Okay.
And of course, there is another part of the hill that is in our Barolo Classico, because so we have also a little bigger production of Barolo, where we have the grapes of the different vineyards we own. And of course, we will continue producing this type of wine. And so, of course, we can only separate part of the single vineyards we own.
Okay. Well,
of course, the way of producing the wine, it will be the same. So we age the wine 3 years in big wood. And for Rocche dell'Annunziata, we have a little smaller barrel. It's 25 hectoliters, or Slavonian oak, like the Barolo, Cannubi and Brunate. So there are no differences in the production of the wine.
Just so I know, and all of us who are watching know, since we didn't have the photo of where your vineyards are, the rows that you have that you're using for your single vineyard, Rocche dell'Annunziata, are they in the middle part or higher part or lower part? And who are you next to?
So it's 1 hectare. It's in the middle part. So I think so. There are no differences in the quality of one part or the other part. So we choose a part of it, and probably it was the lowest part because we started there with the harvest, but so it's not a so big difference in altitude between the lowest rows and the highest rows.
Right.
At the bottom, we have some freisa. I don't know if I said it to you.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
We planted some freisa last year. We of freisa in 3-4 years. So, but it's a very small production. So we can speak in the next time about that.
Right. No, I love freisa.
It's a project at the moment.
No, that's great.
Yes.
And last question, and we'll move on to Cannubi and Brunate. But who are your neighbors in that your 1 hectare in Rocche dell'Annunziata? What other wineries are right there? What other producers, excuse me, have rows in Rocche?
You mean in where is close to us in Rocche dell'Annunziata?
Right. What producers own rows of that vineyard that if people want to look on a map that they can find it?
So I think there is Molino close to us. Maybe Tiziana.
Yeah.
More about the area, and then going a little higher, there is Maria Teresa Mascarello that is a little higher than we on the road going to Torriglione. Yes, there are different producers.
Yeah, Andrea Alberto, I think, is in that part. Andrea Alberto from La Morra.
Roberto Verzio is near there, right?
Roberto Verzio is as the vineyards lower than mine, close to mine. Okay. In the first part of Rocche dell'Annunziata.
So on the other side, yeah.
Yeah, right. We are in the other side.
Mascarello. Yeah. Okay, great. All right. Well, let's move on to. We'll go back to Paola and we'll talk about Brunate and Cannubi.
The road for going to Torriglione, and on the left you have the hill that goes to Brunate, that includes also the Boiolo area. So our vineyard looks on the left to the Boiolo vineyard, where we own also a parcel that with the Nebbiolo and the Barbera that is in our Barolo Classico, same.
All right. Well, everybody knows you, Paola, for your Cannubi and your Brunate Barolo. So let's talk about those. There's a picture of Cannubi.
So, yes, this year we are bottling and selling Barolo 2017. So I think this is the first picture you had about. Dove siamo? We lost.
Yeah.
Mm.
No,
Paola, you there?
Yes.
Okay.
So our Barolo Cannubi, you know, we have 2 hectares close to our house, to our wine cellar, that is Cannubi Boschis. Allora, Cannubi Boschis, because the old owner of this farmhouse, so yes, this is our vineyard, the beginning, yes, a part of it. And the old owner of this farmhouse was a Boschi. So we speak about more than 100 years ago. So it's not in relation with Chiara Boschis, for example. It was a farmer of the Marquises Falletti living in this farmhouse.
Okay.
And then we have a smaller parcel in the middle of the hill that is only Cannubi. Of course, usually we mix the grapes because they come from the same hill, and I think it makes a little confusion to have 2 different wines from the same hill. But this is our wine cellar. This is Cannubi Boschis.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to talk a lot about Cannubi today, and maybe that's
Yes,
Brunate,
this
but
is the same vineyard where I take the picture yesterday with the frost problem.
all right. I know
So you see, here we are nearly 200 meters altitude. And so it's an area where we never had problems with the frost.
Okay.
So this year, for example, we are selling Barolo 2017. And you remember in 17 we had some problem frost in late April. But as usual, it was only in the very low positions, in the vineyards close to the road, for example, where we have some Barbera, but never we had frost damage in our Nebbiolo vineyards. So as Tiziana said, maybe this year we will have a little smaller quantity of grapes. Of course, nobody has a big experience in, and so we have to see in the next month the vegetative circle of our grapes, how they will change. So about our Cannubi, of course, the way of aging the wine is the classic way. So we have a long fermentation on the skin, nearly 3 weeks. So we put out the skin only when we have no sugar left in our wine. And then we age our wine only in a big Slavonian oak. We have changed the barrels in the last 10-15 years. So some of them are 12 years old, some of them are 2 years old, and so on. They are between 50 and 20 hectoliters.
okay. Let me stop you for a second. Just maybe a little bit of a history of Cannubi. I know that most people, that when they first learn about Barolo, this is the most famous vineyard, the one that they know. Now I've
yes.
Two questions. One is that I've heard that the name itself comes from the word like connubio, like the joining of 2 people to marry. And that has to refer to the fact.
So, you know, really, the name of our bottle on our label was for a long time Cannubio.
Right.
Changed our label in 2010 with the MGA maps, because of course, so we had to decide the name to use on our label. On our very old documents, the name was Barolo Cannubio.
Right.
Of course, it's the same hill, it's the same area. So we decided to change the label in Barolo Cannubi for don't produce confusion, of course, in people that, of course, has to buy a bottle of wine. So about the soil of Cannubi, I think so they spoke a lot about this hill, also because there were at the beginning some problems between the producers. So somebody was saying Cannubi is only the first part of the hill. Somebody was saying it's only closed to the municipality of Barolo. And somebody was saying, so the complete hill is Cannubi. And so there were a lot of problems about the name we had to write on the label. And at the end, they decided that this is the name we can use for the hill. That includes, of course, Cannubi Boschis, the middle part of the hill, Cannubi Valletta, Cannubi San Lorenzo, Cannubi Moscatel, all the other smaller areas going to the town of Barolo. So about the soil, speaking about Barolo, there are the two different areas, the Tortonian soil and the Helvetian soil. And so the Cannubi Hill is in the middle of the two. And this is why probably here we can add the elements of the Helvetian soil and the Tortonian soil. So if you look a little more east, we have the Helvetian soil with Monforte, with Serralunga, with Castiglione Falletto. And in this case, so the soil is a little more compact, and this is why, so usually the wines have a little more alcohol, they are a little more austere, a little more powerful. If you go a little more west, we have the municipalities of La Morra, the municipalities of Verduno, of Barolo. And here, so the soil is a little younger, even if we speak about 11 million years ago, so not so young, but a little younger. And here we have a little more sand. The soil is less compact. Maybe the wines are a little more elegant, have a little less alcohol, but so a good polyphenolic concentration. Speaking about Cannubi, that is in the middle of two areas, we can say that we can add and mix the elements of the two different areas. Okay. So in our case, we see that, of course, comparing Cannubi and Brunate, in Cannubi we have a little more sand compared to Brunate, for example. And usually we have a little more elegant wines in Brunate, and Cannubi is a little more austere compared to Brunate. So there are differences, of course, in the soil, and differences in the wine. This is Brunate, yes. Yes, I have to say that also in Brunate we had some frost damage. Even if it's a little higher, we have, so our vineyard is 2 hectares. We have a part that is closed to the road, to the Fontanassa road, and there we had no problems. Okay. But in the middle of the hill, we had frost problems this year. So we were very unhappy with the last 2 weeks. Okay. And yes, this is Brunate. This is our old house in the vineyards. This is Cascina La Brunata. So in the official registers. So probably this is the small house that gives the name to this part of hill. Of course,
how old are these
to the
vines?
past.
How many years ago? How old are these vines in Brunate?
So my grandfather Francesco bought this house in 1936. I said it sometimes because it's funny. He bought a house and 2 hectares for the small amount of 60,000 lire.
Wow.
That is at the moment, yes, very.
That's about 2 plants these days, isn't it?
Very cheap.
Yeah.
With hanging fruit, so we had only to pick up the grapes for the first vintage. And of course, I had to ask my uncle because I don't know exactly what it means now, 60,000 milliliter, and he said that it was cheap. So it was cheap because in the past, of course, the production of wine was not so interesting as today. So you had to work a lot. There were not a lot of producers. It was hard work. It was not so easy to sell Barolo, even if, of course, there were wine producers. And this is why, of course, all the vineyards, also the very good positions to the sun, were not so expensive like today.
Okay. Tiziana, let's talk. I'll go back to you, Paola, a little bit. We'll talk more about Cannubi and Brunate, but Tiziana, let's talk about Rocche dell'Annunziata. Tell us your family's history in that vineyard.
Yeah. So our wine adventure began with my grandparents in 1943 when they moved from Alte Lange, so from the higher part of Lange, and they established in that old house, that is an house end of 18th century, and from 1943 till 60s, they were mezzadri. So mezzadri was, they were working for the owner of that house, of that farm, and these were owners even of some plots in Rocche dell'Annunziata. So my grandparents began with a mixed agriculture farm, breeding animals, cultivating hazelnuts, having fields somewhere, and producing grapes in Rocche dell'Annunziata in around 1.5 hectares. Then, when my father-in-law passed away too early and too young, because he was 59 years old.
Wow.
Years young, my father-in-law, Domenico, in 1962, when he died, my father decided to build the house where actually we have our cellar, and leave the mixed agriculture farm and beginning this wine adventure. So he began slowly to buy other vineyards all around the cellar. So you can see left side up here, our cellar on the top of the hill, where there's this white house and the red on left side.
Okay.
And totally right side at the end, almost at the end, in front to Annunziata, in front to the bell tower of Annunziata, there was the old house where I was born. So my parents moved in that white house left side in 1964.
Okay.
And my grandfather began slowly to buy other plots in Rocche dell'Annunziata and all around the cellar. So you can see the top of the hill where there's the White House, and then this little chabot, this little house in the middle of the hill, is 2 hectares and 25, and the hill is exactly in front of Annunziata, so it's a southeasterly exposure.
Okay.
Looking in direction to Alba, in direction to Cordero di Montezemolo.
Okay.
And in front of us, we have our plots in Rocche dell'Annunziata from the road that is driving in direction to Torriglione, is exactly in front of us, in my right side. This is part of our vineyards in Rocche dell'Annunziata. So this is a totally southwesterly exposure, and these are now 3 hectare and almost half, 3 hectare and 42. And these are 13 different parcels planted in different, replanted in different moments.
Right.
Now
How old are your oldest vines?
The older vine now in Rocca dell'Annunziata are 2 parcels replanted in 1962.
Okay. I love this photo, by the way, and thank you for sending this to me, because it gives everybody who's watching an idea of the amphitheater aspect of Rocca dell'Annunziata. And I spoke with several producers about this. One, many of you who are watching today know him very well, Nicola Alberto, and he described it as sort of a C shape. You can kind of see the way it curves like that. And
now I think there's not any more movement of ground, so there's a demand of people looking for, but it's not only in Rocca dell'Annunziata, I think it's in Cannubi, in Brunate, is everywhere, that there's a demand, but there's no offer, because now the whole vineyards are in hands of wine growers. They have their own cellar. My father last little vineyard he bought was around 3,600 square meters, exactly in the middle of our vineyards of Rocca dell'Annunziata, and this was sold from a family. They had no cellar. They were selling the grapes. It was exactly in the middle of our vineyards. We couldn't say no. But this was the last one, and I told my father, okay, now we stop to buy vineyards if we wanted to maintain this cellar as a family management. Because I think afterward we could go over our production that is now around 40,000 bottles. 80% are Nebbiolo for Barolo, because our total extension Nebbiolo for Barolo for Classico Barolo and Rocca dell'Annunziata is now 5 hectare and almost half. And then we have only 1 hectare Cetto d'Alba. So it's all we have, because in the past my grandfather, I was smiling when Paola talked about the Freisa. My grandfather replanted a vineyard in the lower part of Rocca dell'Annunziata in 1946, and at the bottom, at the lower part, was Freisa. Only few meters of Freisa, but this was something that when we replanted that vineyard end of 90s, we decided to replant Nebbiolo for Barolo, because this Freisa in that ground, that is a ground really clay and limestone and blue marl in depth, was giving us a strange Freisa that was really strong body Freisa. A dry one was not something, and sometimes too alcoholic for a Freisa. I mean, for me, Freisa is a wine that is funny, that is nice to drink. But was a strange Freisa, yeah. But interesting. I was smiling because I remember my grandfather's decision to have some so only few meters Freisa at the bottom of a Nebbiolo for Barolo in full Rocca dell'Annunziata.
Okay, well, yeah. you said it was a strange Freisa, but sometimes I think with Freisa, the stranger the better sometimes. So
yeah,
you don't have to follow somebody else's model. You know, it's the people aren't going to give it 100 points. So
you never know. We could never know what could happen with that Freisa. Could be dry, could be a little bit bubbles. We never know. No, I'm joking. But this was the idea, to never know exactly what we could do. Yeah.
Right. I have one question here from my friend Manuel Bergi in Bern. Manuel, thank you for joining us.
Manuel, as my friend too.
There you go. Yeah, I think he knows everybody in Barolo. So Manuel, appreciate it. He has a great question for you, Tiziana. He says, do you know what will happen to the parcels from Commendatore Lorenzo Accomasso one day in the future. Because I don't know how old he is. I know
Manuel, you must ask to him. I'm a neighbor of Accomasso, but I think it's better that you ask to him. But I know you are very, very good friends. You are amongst the really lucky people that were able to visit his cellar. So I think you can ask to him. It's now some months I didn't meet him. I think he's still healthy. He's still good. And Lorenzo was a very good friend of my father because they were same age. They went to school together, and so Lorenzo Accomasso visited. I remember Lorenzo Accomasso when I was a little baby. He went frequently to visit my parents, and he's really a special person. But I don't know what will happen with Lorenzo Accomasso cellar and vineyards. Sorry, Manuel.
How old is Lorenzo now?
Lorenzo is now turning to 88 because 1933.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's one of the things.
He just replanted in 2017 the Rocche dell'Annunziata vineyard close to mine. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've read all about his parcels, and I've had his wine. Actually, I've only had his Barbera, so that's on my list. I've not been able to try it, and I've not been able to visit. We drove right by. I get pictures, but the next time. But fingers crossed. But
yeah,
I'm going to put up a picture. I know you have a Classico Barolo, you have a Barolo Rocche dell'Annunziata, and you have a Reserva. And I'll put the picture up here. Yeah, the label for a second.
The Reserva is something that we are doing not every great vintages, but only when we find the grapes that we repute okay in a great vintage, as it was 12, or as it will be the 16, for example. So the selection is done because clearly we have 13 different parcels. The selection is done from the older vineyards, so the vineyards that are more than 45 years old till the 60s years old, and normally we don't do every good vintage. So we did 12. We are now releasing the 12 Riserva Rocche dell'Annunziata. That was really a small quantity. As Paola told before, only one barrel, 3,300 liters. So that means around 4,000 butters and some magnums and double magnums. Okay. And the next one will be Rocche dell'Annunziata Riserva 16.
16, great vintage.
16, yeah.
16, right. Well, that picture I had, the label I had up with 2012, I know my friend John Rittmaster, your friend and everybody's friend.
Yeah.
We both talked about this.
He's doing breakfast. He's doing breakfast with a Barolo breakfast with me and Paola this morning for him in California.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Nebbiolo or tea or a mixture of cafe corretto or whatever it is.
I hope no mixture of tea and Nebbiolo, no.
John, everybody loves you, but I was going to say that John and I have talked about this, and we both think that the 2012 Reserva is phenomenal. Yeah. Great wine.
I think 12, I repute it was really one interesting vintage because it was a vintage that didn't give to us a lot of problems in diseases, for the major diseases we can get, for maladies, for the plants. The winter was mild, but then it recovered, and then we had a nice summer, but not extremely hot, and not too much quantity naturally, because we got a little bit rain when flowering, and so we lost a little bit berries, but not too much. So from this Riserva 12 and from this old vineyard, that was the last Riserva we did from that vineyard, because we did the harvest and then we put off this vineyard and we replanted in 2014. I left 2 years the ground to sleep. A lot of my colleagues were really astonished. Every day someone asked me, but you don't replant anymore? What are you doing? So I'm relaxed. I'm really slow.
Okay.
But I thought after more than 45 years was really important to do what our old people here in the region were doing, where they were replanting. They left the ground a moment. We did some samples of the ground to see if we needed to do some fertilizer. But then we crashed the ground, we broke the ground, and we left under 2 winters and 2 summers. So we put off the vineyard in October, after the harvest, 12, and we replanted in March 2014. It was something crazy because I lost 2 years.
Yeah, that's something most people would do. So that's.
But I think after so long time, it's important to do and leave the ground to disinfect even under the cold temperatures, under the hot temperatures during summertime.
Yeah, good. Yeah, well, good for you. I'm impressed by that. And one other question here. It may be for both of you. I think it may be just for Tiziana, but I think both of you can answer this. But Attila Aranios, who's watching today, sorry if I mispronounced that, he wanted to know about your selection for Langhe Nebbiolo.
Yeah.
How do you choose that?
Our selection was the big wish of my father Aurelio, because he always told me, Tiziana, I wanted to show what's Nebbiolo impurity, first of all, how is important this grape. And so the decision from my father, and I continue to follow his philosophy on our Langhe Nebbiolo, is the selection done from the younger vineyards and from the southeasterly exposure, so from the exposure where we are producing our Barolo Classico. And then, so it's simply a little bit shorter maceration than for a Barolo. So depending from vintage to vintage, could be 10, 12 days maceration, and then no oak aging, but malolectic fermentation in concrete tanks, and then in steel tanks, and then in bottle. So normally we arrive to the bottling not before than the 3rd year, but without oak aging. Okay. So the idea is to show something that is Nebbiolo impurity in the nose, in the taste. You really have Nebbiolo. Okay. This is what I'm really following, and I'm really happy. So when it's not something that we are able to do every vintage, because I don't want to show a Langhe Nebbiolo over 14 in alcohol. So now we are releasing 16. Okay. We just bottled the 18, but we didn't release right now because it was bottled in beginning of February, the 18. And we jumped the 17, because in 17, even if I really anticipated the harvest mid-September for the whole our Barolo, the whole Barolos, Classico and Rocche dell'Annunziata were around 14 in alcohol. Yeah. No more, but I didn't want to have a Langhe Nebbiolo at that alcohol. Right. So for me, the best is in between 13.5 till 14, no more. Great. So it's not something that we are releasing every day.
I admire that. I know people all the time who love Barolo and Barbaresco are always worried about that with the higher alcohols. But and just one last question before we go back to Paola. But Paola told us about, of course, the maturing of the Cannubi and the Brunate that she makes is always in Slavonian oak. So what about for your Rocche dell'Annunziata?
For me, is for Rocche dell'Annunziata, for Barolo Classico, we don't have a particular oak for so a different oak for these 2 wines. The size of the barrels are the medium traditional size in between 2,500 liters up a maximum 3,500 liters, not bigger but not smaller than 2,500. And the oak in the last 20 years is French oak. We are using now Allier, some Nevers, and I'm testing now some Austrian oak, Weidling, that is really closer to Allier because the grains are really smaller than Nevers, or the Manasberg, that is the other Austrian oak that we are trying now. So first wine that was in that oak, Austrian oak, was 15 vintage.
Thank you.
A part, only a small part.
Right.
Because we are testing, yeah.
Paola, a quick question, and we'll talk about your Reserva, but Brunate and Cannubi, which one is normally harvested first?
So usually we start with the Brunate, even if of course we are so a small wine cellar. So usually when we start with harvest with the Nebbiolo grape, so we have nearly 7.5 hectares with the Nebbiolo da Barolo grapes. And this means for us that we need nearly 7 days. So usually we start with the Brunate, but only because in the old way of working, we were saying, so it's a little more far from our house. So we start with Brunate. So if we will have rain in the next day, it's easier for us to pick up Cannubi because we are at home. So we start with Brunate because it's a little more far from our house. But of course, so it's not a big difference. So it's nearly 1 week between the beginning and the end of harvest. Of course, if there are no problems with rain or something like that. So at first Brunate, and the last one is Cannubi because I said that it's a home, so even if we have rain or something like that, it's easier for us to bring the grapes to the cellar.
Okay, and to be specific, we know that the MGA of Cannubi is in the commune of Barolo, whereas Brunate is classified as both La Morra and Barolo. But
yes, our parcel is in the middle of the hill, so half of the vineyard is in Barolo and half of the vineyard is in La Morra. Also, the small house you saw in the picture before, the house is half in Barolo and half in La Morra. So if we have to work in this house, we have to ask to the municipality of Barolo and also to La Morra. It's in the middle.
I think that was this.
They decided in the past to build housing. So yes, so the roof is half in Barolo and half in La Morra.
I never knew that. That's amazing. So
yes.
Now we talked about the Rocca dell'Annunziata Reserva from Tiziana. Now you make a Reserva also.
Yes, I have a Reserva. This one.
Yes.
This year I have. Reserva 15. So our Reserva is very young because the first Reserva we produced was Reserva Cannubi 2013. We never decided to produce a Reserva before. And in 2013 we started with a small production of nearly 1,500 bottles of Reserva 13. So also we decided not to have a Reserva all the years, so we don't want to have one label more. But so sometimes if we decide that we want to age part of the wine a little longer, we can take a smaller part in a barrel for 1 or 2 years more and have a Reserva. So we had a Reserva in 2015, that is the one we have bought now, and we will have a Reserva in 2016. So it's not a label more, but a decision we can have each year. So if we decide that we want to take some wine for a longer time in our cellar.
And how many bottles of these did you produce?
So in 2015 we had a little more. We had a small barrel of 2,000 liters. So maybe this will be 2,600 bottles of Reserva 15. That is in the bottle now. We are selling this wine at the moment.
And are you exporting that wine, or is it only available in Italy? The Reserva Cannubi.
The Reserva Cannubi, so usually we have 2 barrels with Cannubi in our cellar. One is the highest part of the hill, and then we have the lower part with the hill. We usually Reserva is from the highest part of the hill. And, usually we age the wine 3 years in our botti. And in this case, we put a part of this Barolo Cannubi, of the highest part, in a smaller botte that is 2,000 liters for nearly 6 months more.
Okay.
Then we put the wine for 2 or 3 months in still, and then we are going to bottle the wine and wait the time for selling the Riserva.
Okay. We have about 5 or 6 minutes left. Just to have one more quick question here from Manuel, who wants to know about your Barbaresco. We talked about Barolo today, but
so about Barbaresco, we don't own.
He wanted to know where the grapes are from, and then
yes, our grapes come from Barbaresco. We don't own a vineyard in Barbaresco,
okay.
So we buy the grapes in Barbaresco, usually from the same producer. And yes, we produce our Barbaresco in Barolo because we have an historical authorization to produce Barbaresco out of the Barbaresco area. So my great-grandfather was producing Barbaresco in Barolo, and so we can continue doing that. Of course, this is a small production. Each year we produce nearly 2,000 liters of Barbaresco. That means nearly 2,500 bottles of Barbaresco.
Okay.
Long fermentation of the skin also in this case. And then we age the wine for 2 years in Slavonia oak in a botte for 2,000 liters.
Okay, let me interrupt you for just a second. Tiziana has taken us outside.
Is in the
vineyard? I did. I ran, and I'm now in our higher Rocche dell'Annunziata vineyard, close to the cellar. And now is the green menu really flowering. We have mustard and some, okay, here is much more floral than in the southeastern part. We have much more legumes, so peas, fava beans, etc., that we are using as green manure. And it's the pity in the afternoon is that the sunshine is exactly back to me, but from here is around 300 meters, 320 meters. So, and this is part of Rocche dell'Annunziata because it's southwesterly exposure. And this, I think, Paola, you can see down here the Torriglione, and I think your vineyards are in that direction, right?
Yes, the direction is, yes, it's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's that vineyards that are down to Rocche Costamagna vineyards,
yes.
right?
Okay. The direction is, it's correct, yes. You are a little higher than we are.
Yeah, yes, it's higher, yes. Yeah. So I ran a moment in vineyards because I wanted to do the connection outside, but as you can see, it's really windy. And my ears today is really sunshine, but it's really again windy, and probably could arrive rain in tomorrow, but we are not sure because the forecast could be rain.
Well,
okay.
Tiziana, on behalf of, I think, everybody who's watching, especially since we're all stuck inside most of the day, for you to be outside and then to have this beautiful panorama in Rocche dell'Annunziata, it's a great way to end it. And you're making me jealous.
We are lucky because we are under, till now we are a little bit locked down, but with our work is not to be locked down.
Exactly.
So we didn't suffer of that. We suffer for a lot of things. So as it happened to Pio, but we had a lot of people that we knew. They went to hospital, etc. So I really hope that this pandemic and this disaster will end soon all over the world, and that the vaccine will help, because really. Yes. It's something that anybody were expecting, so
right. Well, as you said, you're both doing well. That's great to hear.
So, you know, I must move my office in Vineyards because my personal connection on tablet is better than my Wi-Fi in office. That's crazy. That's crazy. I must move my office in Vineyards.
I think that's a great idea. I think you should do it. So
Yeah,
we're out of time. The two of you talking together, you're so engaging. This was so educational. I had a lot of fun. This was going to be Ladies' Day, which it actually did turn out to be, but we were going to have more great women from Piedmont.
Paola, we need as soon as we will be reopened to have a glass of Barolo together somewhere.
Yes, and we will taste the Rocche dell'Annunziata.
Ci facciamo magari.
Taste our new Rocche dell'Annunziata, so you can. I want to have your opinion.
We can compare the two lines.
Okay,
So.
why not? Why not? We do a testing together.
Grazie mille.
Thanks a lot.
Tiziana, thank you, and thank you for taking us outside the vineyard. So, Paola, it's always great to talk to you, and as I said, we just did two great women today of Barolo. We're going to try and get a couple other ones, such as Elisa Scavino and Cristina Odero. For various reasons, they couldn't participate today, but I will work on getting them involved in a webinar very, very soon. So, thank you all for attending, and.
Grazie mille.
2007.
Thanks
So thank you.
to everybody.
Okay.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.